I bring you a video about the classic physique category, 2 weeks before the 2023 Mr. Olympia. I'm going to analyze several competitors and make my predictions. First of all, let's look at the results from last year's 2022 Olympia. The winner was, of course, Sibum. In second place was Ramon Dino, followed by Urs in third, Brayon in fourth, and Mike Sommerfeld in fifth. The surprise was that Rough Diesel, who had finished second the previous year, ended up in fourth place, and Fabian Mayer was in seventh place. Wesley Vissers took eighth place, Cambronero ninth, and Michael Daboul was 10th. Honestly, I believe the top positions will have similar names this year, but things get interesting from the fifth place onwards. In positions 12 and 13, I see it as possible for two bodybuilders to be there, regardless of the order. One of them is Diego Galindo, the Colombian, a bodybuilder I really like. He has a unique aesthetic that sets him apart from other competitors, though he shares some similarities with Rough Diesel. He has an incredibly narrow waist that almost disappears when viewed from the side. I think his body structure is slightly narrower than other competitors, but his body proportions create a classic X shape. This year, he has added a considerable amount of muscle, appearing larger and more complete than before, with room to continue growing. The last time he competed, his conditioning was remarkable. He had a well-defined back, ripped glutes, and highly developed calves and hamstrings. He brought an impressive physique, and if he can bring something similar or better to the Olympia, I believe he could secure the 12th or 13th place, although I would personally rank him higher in the top. Next, I'm going to mention a bodybuilder who also has a very classic look, much like Chris Bumstead. It's Laszlo Kirali, a Hungarian. Personally, his physique is one of my favorites. I have to admit that his proportions and X-shaped physique are quite impressive. He has broad clavicles and a wide back, as you can see in the front double biceps pose. It's incredible. He has a narrow waist, massive legs with remarkable separation, especially the vastus externus of the quadriceps, which really stands out. I believe this guy could easily secure a place in the top 12. In positions 11 and 10, I've selected two competitors. One of them is Chen Kong, a Chinese bodybuilder who generated a lot of excitement at the last Olympia and, if I'm not mistaken, finished 14th. He's of shorter stature but has a muscular frame. He placed fourth in the Dubai Pro, with 3 other top classic competitors finishing ahead of him, mainly due to subpar conditioning. His physique is quite favorable, with broad clavicles, a narrow waist, big legs, and prominent back muscles. I believe he fits the judges' criteria quite well. If I had to highlight something about his physique, it's pretty obvious. His legs, they are massive. Personally, I find his physique well-balanced, with a lot of size and aesthetic appearance. If his conditioning is on point at this Olympia, I think he could easily secure the 10th or 11th position, although in bodybuilding, it's all quite subjective. I'll also place Fabio Junio here, a man who finished ahead of Wesley Vissers and Chen Kang in the Dubai Pro. In my opinion, the judges were a bit off because this guy doesn't have a classic structure. Rather, he has the physique of an open competitor. What do you think? However, it's true that the last time he competed in Dubai, his conditioning was spot on. He was shredded, hard, and had a lot of muscle, appearing much larger than some of the other top bodybuilders. In my view, he's similar to Brayon, with a fantastic physique, well-conditioned and complete, but not the best classic physique structure. Between 9 and 10, Cambronero or Matala could end up. Alex Cambronero has already competed in the Masters Olympia, which means that he may not compete in the regular Olympia because he has already done so in the Masters Olympia and has won it. I don't know if he will compete again against the younger competitors. At over 40 years old, he is a classic bodybuilder with finer, narrower proportions than others. He has an excessively narrow waist and a rather pleasing aesthetic. He also has very good muscle separation, with enormous dorsal muscles that look somewhat unusual, and I've always had my doubts about them. His lower body in some poses appears somewhat lacking. I like his physique, but I'm unsure if he will compete in this Olympia. In 9th place, I would put Mr. Unchained, Stefan Matala, a man who generated a lot of hype on Instagram as a potential Olympia champion capable of dethroning Chris Bumstead. However, on stage, he was just another professional. He has an impressive physique, but the last time I saw him, I think he appeared a bit flat. I believe he had to go through a lot to make weight, and ended up looking deflated, not full. He had to shed too much fat, water, salts, and, of course, muscle mass. He stands at 178 centimeters or 5 feet 10 inches, so he will need to weigh less than 96 kg or 202 pounds. He has a fantastic X shape, a slender waist, massive legs with well-developed quads, as well as substantial calves and hamstrings. His pec muscles are astonishing from the front, with fibers resembling ropes, which is quite distinctive. I don't think his abdominal genetics are good, but his narrow waist is a plus. His arms are fairly large with good size, but his biceps are long and flat, lacking a pronounced peak. However, his triceps seem quite good. As for his back poses, he has considerable dorsal development and density, but I believe his back is not enough to secure one of the top positions in the classic division. He still has room for improvement. In 8th place, we have Wesley Vissers. Personally, I would rank him higher, but I believe the judges will place him 8th. Here we have an example of a bodybuilder with remarkable conditioning, often appearing extremely lean and hard. He stands at 6 feet 2 inches, making him quite tall. Given his elongated structure, it's challenging for him to look as full as competitors of average or shorter stature. His lats insert quite high, and he has an elongated waist, which gives him somewhat unusual proportions. For many, this might not be considered classic, but then again, what defines classic? According to the judges, today's classic physique resembles the shape of Chris Bumstead or Rough Diesel, and even Dino wouldn't be considered classic by their standards. We've seen positions in competitions this year where structure seemed to matter too much, and that's why I think Wesley might be ranked a bit lower, possibly in 8th place. He exhibits impressive muscle separation, and I particularly like his legs. With well-defined sartorius muscles and well-developed quads, his abdominal symmetry is quite good, and his chest and shoulder muscles show pronounced muscle fibers, much like Matala. I think his arms are good, with well-developed biceps featuring a strong peak, but he would need to improve them along with his back. I believe he still has untapped potential, but his fine skin and old-school aesthetics with Arnold-style poses would make me rank him in 8th place or higher. In 7th place, I would like to see Michael DeBoule, one of my favorite classic physique competitors, especially because of his exceptional conditioning. He's probably one of the driest classic competitors I've seen on stage. The last few times he has competed this year, I've noticed significant improvements in his back and leg development. I believe he has gained quite a bit of muscle and is no longer one of those classic competitors with low weight. He has managed to fill out his structure more and appear fuller. He has a highly noticeable posterior chain, tremendous separation in the hamstrings, well-defined glutes and lower back, and a remarkable back density. In front poses, he displays notable leg separation that enhances their aesthetics. Perhaps his rib cage is somewhat unusual, and his line may not appear the most classic by today's criteria, but I personally love his condition and hardness. He looks as if he's made of stone, and that should be valued. I think this guy deserves a good placement among the top contenders.